I was at home alone the other night, just minding my own business when there was a knock at the door. It was an old friend of mine. He asked to come inside and I said okay. I knew that he'd been suffering from substance abuse issues for some time, but when he stepped out of the darkness and into the light of my house, I could see the full extent of what methamphetamines had done to him. He was about 30 pounds lighter, wearing only a polar fleece vest, bare arms, socks, and jail sandals. His arms were covered in abrasions and welts, except for the parts that were covered in gauze. He said that he'd been arrested for trespassing and they'd sicked the dogs on him. When he removed the gauze, the abrasions looked like meth welts to me. He had an ankle bracelet on and he was carrying around a mothership-type computer that was about the size of a large George Foreman grill. He had to plug it in wherever he was planning on staying by order of the penal system. When he plugged it into an outlet near where he was sitting, I said, "Whoa, let's not get ahead of ourselves here," and I frantically tried to call his people. But every member of his family that I know was out of town. He looked like 100 miles of rough road, and I'd known him forever, so against my better judgment, I decided that he could stay until first light. I made him some food, and I laid down sheets on my couch, and when the sun came up, I outfitted him with some warmer clothes and more suitable footwear. We ate breakfast, and I drove him to rehab. I wished him luck, and I thought that that was the end of it. But it wasn't the end of it. It wasn't until the next day that I found out that those welts on his arms weren't from a dog attack or from meth. Well, I'm sure some of them were from meth, but not all of them. You see, he'd been diagnosed with MRSA. For those who don't know, MRSA is methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus. It is basically a form of staph infection that has evolved to be resistant to antibiotics. I didn't know a lot about MRSA, but I knew that it was extremely contagious, it was potentially fatal, and it was notoriously difficult to cure. I spent much of the next day bleaching every surface in my house and throwing away anything that he may have come into contact with. And I'm happy to report that 72 hours later, I'm still symptom-free, but I'm not out of the woods yet. According to the web, it takes between 1 and 10 days for symptoms to appear, so I have to wait a week in suspense, wondering if in an attempt to be merciful, I'll end up MRSA-full. And I was wondering what the message of this soapbox should be. And it could be something like, don't do meth, or if a meth head knocks on your door in the middle of the night, don't let him in. And those would be perfectly reasonable messages. But they're a little too obvious. I want to talk a little bit about MRSA. There are two reasons it has evolved. The first is from doctors prescribing antibiotics too freely. But if you're not a doctor, that doesn't really apply to you. And the other is from patients taking antibiotics the wrong way. You know the phrase, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger? Well, with bacteria, that's especially true. If you get antibiotics for an infection, you're supposed to take them for 14 days straight, but you feel better after a week, and you say to yourself, I'll save these for next time I feel sick. You're contributing to a public health problem. You're basically training bacteria to beat the antibiotics. So, as I leave you today, my words of advice are, only take antibiotics if prescribed by a doctor for a specific infection. And in that case, make sure you take the whole course of antibiotics. That is my message. That, and don't do meth. And if a meth head knocks on your door in the middle of the night, don't let him in. It may seem cruel and it may seem merciless, but in this world of antibiotic-resistant superbugs, MRSA-less is what we should all be shooting for. This has been my Sunday Soapbox. Thanks for watching.